So my mama named me Carly Richards. I recently changed it to Rowan. Just changed the middle name, so I go by my middle name. But yeah, I'm actually from Akron, Ohio. I like joined the Navy fresh out of boot camp, and then went to Colorado shortly after that, and that's kind of how I ended up here.
So, can you walk me through everything that took place on July 20th, 2012, as comfortable as you possibly can be?
Yeah, it's almost like when I talk about the Aurora Theater shooting, it almost feels like I don't want to say it feels rehearsed, but like I've had to say it so many times that I'm just like, okay. But yeah, so I moved out to Colorado after the Navy, and I was dating a film school student actually. So we went to the movies all the time. And I was really excited to go to the premiere of The Dark Knight Rises, like really excited. Um, and we were just, I guess, lucky, unlucky, whatever, that we saw someone come in, and I thought maybe it was a publicity stunt. I was really annoyed actually because I was like, we paid all this money to see this movie. Like, couldn't you do that before or after the movie? Because who processes that's going to happen, right? But um, it seems so unlucky, but I guess we were lucky that someone lobbed a can of tear gas at us, and it landed right at my feet and my boyfriend at the time's feet. But we knew what tear gas smelled like from being in the Navy. They gas you in boot camp. Um, just enough to know what it smells like. So obviously, like we smelled it right away, and we were like, "Oh shit, that's tear gas!" And um, I got up and ran. According to my boyfriend at the time, I jumped over him. He's like 6'6", like amazing, I guess. But I jumped over him, which my mom said, good job, you took some of the first shots. But yeah, I didn't realize I was being shot at. I was being shot at, and the whole like fight or flight thing kicked in. I ran, and like I didn't realize like got to the car, like all my brain was really saying was get to car, like get out. And I realized when I got to the car that there was like something red on me. It's my like the pain sunk in my arm, and I touched it, and I looked at my hand, and it was like just red. Like it was like I just dunked my hand in paint. So I thought like paint, fake blood, someone else's blood. Oh, it's my blood. And that's when we realized like we have to get to a hospital as soon as possible. And we we knew that when we had driven in, there was like a cop doing like construction traffic that was posted up. So we were like, hey, like where's the nearest hospital? Like we're not from here. Like what do we do? And he was like, oh crap, like he saw how bad it was, and he was like, we're gonna call you an ambulance. And I guess like when we left, there was already a cop car like barreling in there. So I guess someone had already been called. So yeah, I guess they called an ambulance, and the paramedics, I was like, what happened? Like I was really in shock. I was like, what happened? And they were like, there was a shooting. And like I think I laughed like because I was like, that just sounded so absurd to me at the time. Like how could that happen? So yeah, so I was count number 55 of attempted murder in the Aurora Theater shooting.
So, do you remember what was the first thing you remember happening or doing after the incident took place?
Do you mean after like to the hospital, or like
Yeah,
when?
like after you went to the hospital, do you remember, like what was happening, or do you remember what you were doing at the time?
It was kind of rough. Like I realized that I still have some issues when I go get x-rays, because like the second I got there, it was almost like I felt like a rag doll almost, because they had to just like snap snap, like hurry up and get everything taken care of. Like all of a sudden, like I'm naked, I have a catheter, I have you know what I mean? It was nuts. Like they were like they had to like cut my clothes off me, and they put them in like this brown paper bag for evidence. And it was like the weirdest. I mean, it was just like the weirdest thing, like I haven't even seen that shit in movies really. It was really it all happened so fast, and I was in so much shock that I remember just most of it rather than all of it, but I got there, and I do remember a nurse saying like, hey man, have you ever had a catheter before? And I was like, no. And she was like, I was like, maybe when I was 2 and I had surgery. And she was like, we're about to be very close friends. I was like, oh man. um and so yeah, I remember that. I talked to the chaplain. I was in so much shock that I couldn't stop shaking. They tried to do like a CAT scan, and they were like, you can't move. I'm like, can't not move, shaking. And they kept getting me heated blankets and stuff because I thought I was just cold, but actually that helped a lot. That was nice. And actually I look back at the ER report, I was like, they checked like rectal tone, like I mean literally everything. It was like x-ray, CAT scan. But like initially, yeah, it was like ragdoll. It was like clothes off, hospital gown, this. I don't even know how the fuck I got into a hospital gown, by the way. Like I don't know how that happened at all. um and so it was just like, it was like an assembly line. Like these people were really efficient. Like I love the staff at Denver Health, and I feel like I can't thank them enough for being so great in doing what they did. It was like I got to the hospital, like assembly line, and then yeah, CAT scan, X-rays. I don't remember the order of operations. Chaplain, and then I remember I was like one. I always remember like the weirdest details. Calling, trying to call my parents. Like I couldn't remember their phone number. And I dropped my purse on the way out of the theater, so I had no phone. My boyfriend at the time thought I was going to the Aurora Hospital, but I went to Denver Health, and so he was like driving around, like trying to find me, like it was a nightmare. And I really wanted to be able to call my parents before the hospital did, because my mom's a nurse, my dad's a pharmacy tech. They know like if the hospital calls first, then like I'm in bad shape. And I was like, I gotta get a hold of my mom. And so it was, yeah, they really were efficient as hell. And I'm very tired. Sorry, I'm not like super articulate today. It's been an exhausting week. But yeah, it was mostly just letting it sink in what had happened, and being in shock. And I was really desperate to get out of there. Like I wanted to leave the hospital so bad, because my dad's worked at Akron General for like 26 years. That's where my parents met. And like I had heard stories about someone like coming into the hospital and shooting somebody. So it's like I didn't know who shot me. I didn't know what was going on. Like I was like, what if I get shot again? What if they come back, finish the job? So I did everything I could to get out of there. And the next morning they were like, well, if you can walk, you can leave. So I took a few steps, and I was like, all right, as long as you can like wheel me out of here, I'm good. And they were like, all right, cool, out. Um, and yeah, I remember like calling my boss, like I had to call off work or whatever. And like at first she was super like annoyed, like, well, you gotta get someone to cover for you. I'm like, listen, I'm not even calling for my phone. So they dropped it on the way out of the theater, and she was like, oh my God, like take all the time you need. I didn't realize the scale of what had happened. I just knew that I got hurt at the movies. I had no idea until the next day when I posted on Facebook, like, hey guys, like, this happened. I'm okay. Mostly. And, just shaking up, trying to heal. And yeah, I didn't realize the scope of what happened until the next day. And then it was on the news, and they showed the guy's face and stuff. And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea what had happened still until like the next day.
And with your injuries at the time, were they like short term or any like long term effects right now, like
Yeah, like I
physically
still have
wise?
a little pain. Yeah. Like I'm like I feel like the big stuff was short term. Like I mean, I recently had a surgery, and when I woke up, I was like, this is the most pain I've been in since I got shot. Like I got sprayed with bird shot from a shotgun. And I was able to like sort of complete tasks like a couple days later, but like it was, just like an ungodly amount of pain for like especially the first several days. And I still like have, I guess, like a little shrapnel in me that I didn't realize was still there. And like I messed up one of my knees really bad, skidding across the flight deck in the Navy, and then later got shot in the knee, the same knee. So my lucky knee, I still get some pain there and stuff. And I do think a lot of it's from like damage from that. But um, I think overall, like the pain doesn't get that, I don't want to say it doesn't get that bad. I have like sciatica and stuff, but like it doesn't get like debilitating anymore. It's kind of nice that I can actually move for the most part. But it does take a lot of maintenance. Like I've done yoga, I've gone to physical therapy, I've done this and that to try and strengthen my body. Like my part of my job is going on walks every day with people's dogs. So um, yeah, like the long-term effects aren't that terrible. Like I'm just very lucky that I wasn't like, paralyzed or something. It's just, those dull, annoying pains that, you know, are annoying.
Right. So what was life like after the incident took place, say for the first few weeks after everything happened?
It was a fucking circus. Wait, can I say fuck on the podcast.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
definitely. You can say whatever you want.
So, like we're talking about serial killers. Like I don't know the stuff that like bothers some people, whatever. So yeah, yeah, it was a circus. Like I had no idea what had happened. Like um all of a sudden there was like I didn't realize how easy people were to find. Like I kind of forgot that like people are easy to find, right? Like there used to be a phone book, right? There was a book back in the day that had everyone's phone numbers and addresses in it, and they threw it at your door every day. I think some stand-up comics said that, and I was like, that's hilarious, but also scary, because yeah, everyone is really easy to find. So like, was it a lawyer showed up? Like a legal team showed up and they were like, do you want to sue the movie theater? And I was like, should we? I don't know. Like, I don't that felt like what happened. You know what I mean? I was like, I barely even processed what happened. I don't even know like any single like law enforcement person that was on that case. Like I had no idea. So, it was a circus. And like I think maybe it was a few days afterwards. I can't quite remember. Like I decided, like I had my little website up for my kind of like modeling stuff. I used to do like kind of like pinups and portraits and stuff like that. It was really fun. Um, and like I had a blog, so I decided like, you know what, I'm just gonna like write everything that happened. And like there's actually an article about me where a lady from Denver Westward says like it kind of reads like a diary entry. Like I was just like still in shock, like decompressing, like do you really decompress from something like that? I don't know. So I was like just writing my account of what happened, like from beginning to end. And people all of a sudden I was like the poster child for like every angry atheist on the internet because it was like I said something about how like I don't believe that God saved me. I believe that like my automatic whatever nervous system saved me and the people at Denver Health saved me and the paramedics saved me. Like, you know, um, I said something like it was my head on my shoulders and like I used it and like it was so obviously not an attack on like anyone else that was there, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like I don't know. I had so many messages and stuff. Like I didn't really know anything about like privacy settings on Facebook and stuff. I didn't know. Like I was like, who at what point in time am I going to like have people relentlessly harassing me to the point where like I need to do that? I had no idea. So like it was just floods of like messages, comments, and then I remember specifically there was one page that posted like, the whole little quote about me, like, oh, I wasn't touched by an angel, like this happened, and I was like, what the fire truck? Like, please take this down. I'm getting so many messages and stuff from people, like just hate mail for this completely out of context quote. And I remember the guy saying something like, oh, are you just going to be like this, like, whiny, like, victim? Or are you going to be like a strong survivor? I'm like, it's not a fucking dichotomy. Like, like, I can't emphasize that to people enough. I'm like, it's not a dichotomy. Like, this terrible thing happened to you. And like, that's what trauma is. You're having like a natural response to something unnatural that happened. Like, you should be upset. Like, if you're not upset, like, you know what I mean? Like that's probably a red flag. But yeah, and it was just funny because someone commented, like, I can't believe that like the person who's in the pictures is asking you, like, please take this down, like, with this out of context quote, like, and you're just like fighting her on it. And then like I got blocked by, at least a couple pages for that because and I was just like, it's just really funny. I think like they shared it thinking that I was going to be like, oh, that's so cool. And like, because I didn't like proverbially or literally suck their dick for it. They were just like really butthurt. But it's just like that was infuriating at the time, and looking back, I'm just like, oh yeah, that was like pre-incel internet. it was, there's like pre-punk rock and then there's post-punk and yeah, it was pre-incel internet. So yeah, I mean, and that was a long-winded example of like just the kind of stuff that would happen. I had people telling me I was going to burn in hell. I had conspiracy theorists coming out. I think a lot of the people that said they were conspiracy theorists were also just like fans, like people that apparently have some really low or weird standards that wanted to fuck the guy. And so, it was a circus. And then also like trying to like, keep my family and stuff posted. Hey, I'm okay. And, my mom and dad came out to see me like separately. Someone had to stay home with my brother and the cats and stuff. But Yeah, it was a circus. It was a circus. Like it was just like appointments, doctor's appointments, like, the assistant DA saying, "Hey, come in, we got to like tell you what happened." And then like all the online harassment, and not even just harassment, but also the media, TMZ Entertainment got a hold of me. I didn't know who they were. And so yeah, everything after that was just the first few days even were just like a blur because it was just such chaos.
Throughout his trial and legal proceedings and court hearings, did you ever give a victim impact statement?
Yeah, I did give a victim impact statement. It was I think they had us do it like after the sentencing, or at least after the jury thing. Like around that time I was like the trial was hard. I didn't want to testify. I so bad did not want to testify. I was like, how do you get out of a subpoena? But I felt way better after I did. I didn't know it was going to be so cathartic. But yeah, we got to give an impact statement. I don't remember exactly what I said. I know that like my family called me and they said that they were watching it and they were in tears or something. So um and that was hard, but like I knew that, this person doesn't need to have the last word. So even if he doesn't give a shit, like the voices of the people that he affected need to be heard. And so it was really cathartic, I think, to give my statement. I think the point that I tried to drive there was like, there's no way we're going to like bring these people back. We're not going to like really get justice. So like I just want the closest thing we can have. I just want him to not hurt anybody again. And I think that's what I wanted the most at the end of that.
Was he in the courtroom at the time that you gave the statement?
Yeah, he was in the courtroom a lot. It was actually kind of funny because like, I mean, the guy just didn't say a word, didn't look anyone in the eye. Like it was, I remember going to one of the first court hearings, like because I was like, just like look me in the eye once, and he would kind of look around a little bit, but like somehow would just dart right past you with his eyes. Like he just, it was, I was so angry at the time. I was just like, just look at me, like just once, because it was just like such a cowardly act that it was like, I just want, just give me one swing, like just one swing. But yeah, he was there for every single hearing. It's like he was there, but like physically, but I don't know if like mentally he was really there. It was almost like he just checked out so that he could avoid, maybe so that he could avoid, feeling responsible or whatever.
Right. Um, so after everything was said and done, he was convicted and everything. Did you partake in any type of counseling or therapy?
Yeah, I think like it's really important. Like, I think a lot of people dismiss therapy because it's like, finding someone that is like compatible enough to like talk about really traumatic experiences with, like that's hard. And like some people don't want to talk to a stranger about it, but like I had experienced a lot of trauma in my life before that. And so like I think before the theater even shooting even happened, like mental health, man, it takes like forever to get like an appointment with a psychiatrist or a therapist. Sometimes like you have to, I feel like the window is like 60 days. So I'm like, you know what? Like make that appointment before you actually need it. So I actually did have an appointment, and I think it was like a couple days or a couple weeks after the shooting happened. So I was really lucky that like I was already set up with a therapist like when the shooting itself happened. So that was good. And I think by the time the trial happened, I was going to a different therapist, and she was awesome. Like she was like, she told me like, I can't tell you specifics, obviously. She was like, but I have treated people with like the same. I think like when I go to a doctor, they're like, I can't believe someone has this much stuff on their record, on their psychiatric health record. They're always like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, oh, this is awkward. But like, she had treated people who had been victims of sexual assault. She had treated people who had, been victims of gun violence. And I think she had some clients who were from the theater, but obviously she couldn't disclose exactly who. But yeah, so I thought it was really great that I was able to find that. Like she was actually a clinical psychologist too, so it wasn't just like, oh, I got a certification and I'm just, good luck. So yeah, I was really fortunate that I was able to get into therapy like right away so that I could start to unpack it, I think just the decompressing at first is the hardest part. And I didn't really get to because, it was just such a fucking circus afterwards. So it was like, yeah, I was lucky that I got to see a therapist after, like right after it happened.
So what types of things would you do to decompress either before or after you got into therapy?
Like before, so I, like my journey with therapy started like really young. I saw a counselor at a place downtown when I was maybe 12 or 13. And so it was like, I eventually they were just like, oh, we're gonna get a psychiatric nurse in here and try to put you on Zoloft. And my dad was like, okay. So like we didn't do that. And then I didn't really go back to a therapist until I was in the military. And I, I think a lot of things that can happen to you in like any branch are, uh, you know, like a lot of traumatic things can happen to you in the military. And so like I ended up, with my friends taking me to the ER because they were like, you need to go somewhere. And I spent 5 days in a psychiatric hospital. And then a civilian therapist reached out to me and said, hey, like we offer these services, come on over. And so it was kind of like lights up, but I feel like it was good to like kind of get like experience with a therapist, like to just see what it's all about, and it was like I would kind of get to vent to her and learn about like pinpointing my feelings and cognitive behavioral therapy, but like it wasn't anything like too in depth, and then when I got out of the military, I think is when I realized like, no, I have some much more deep seated issues that I need to tackle. And aside from just going to a therapist, I don't think I really was doing anything that was good for me. I played music, so like I had my artistic outlets. I had my rescue dog I took care of. She was incredible. And I don't know, I just feel like most of the time I just drank about it. And shortly before the theater shooting, actually, like my boyfriend and I at the time, we quit drinking for the most part. Like we quit smoking cigarettes, like we quit all that stuff. And instead we were going on like long walks with the dog at night. And, it was really nice. And so, it really sucked when the shooting at the time like took that away from me. I couldn't go on long walks with my dog. I could barely go on a walk up and down the steps so I could take a shower, and it was miserable. So there wasn't really much I was doing that was therapeutic before that, besides maybe writing a little and, you know, I guess just other artistic avenues, like just, playing music and talking to a therapist once in a while.
So let's talk a little bit about murderbilia. I want some of your insight on it, as well as talking about some of the items out that are out there of yours currently. So what do you think about murderbilia and the people that collect it, as well as the people that sell it and putting things on the open market?
Yeah. Murderabilia. I like, like I think like I like collecting oddities. Like I obviously don't have like the room in my apartment or really money to do it to the extent that I would. Otherwise, it would be just like a museum in here. Now it just looks like Spirit Halloween threw up, but it's interesting to me because like for me, like murderabilia is just another sort of oddity that people collect. But I think for people that collect a lot of murderabilia, I think like that's their thing. Like I know a lot of guys, they don't collect oddities. They don't have dead shit in jars. You know what I mean? Like they don't have stuff like that. Like they just collect murderabilia. Like that's specifically what they collect. It's almost like, I think Taylor and I compared it to like collecting stamps or something. So because it's just a specific hobby that I think a lot of people have. And I don't know. I think a lot of people get into like the moral like standpoint of it. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Like, I don't really think like people are good or bad. I think people just are, I guess. Like, I'm sure there's some people that are mostly good or mostly bad, obviously. But in general, I think that like with murderabilia, it's just another like kind of oddly specific thing that a lot of people collect, which I mean, I didn't realize until I was like, hey, I should get rid of this stuff. Um, I didn't realize the scope to which people collected it. I had no idea that people, I mean, there's people with some I mean, this, like there's people with some vast collections of true crime memorabilia. And I think like, it's just, it's just kind of surreal. Like I just didn't know like the scope of it, you know what I mean? And like when I started selling my items, it was because I had seen someone on a program called Taboo, right? It was called Taboo because it is kind of a taboo thing to collect. You know, people are like, you have like letters and this like rope swatch and stuff from Eileen. Like, they're like that's on your mantle next to your book about, combating codependency. It's like, it's just chilling on my mantle. But to people, it's a weird taboo thing to collect, but I think that like when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know people collected that, but it sort of was just like one ear and out the other, right? Like I saw that program and it was like, oh yeah, this guy collects serial killer memorabilia. He buys and sells it. It pisses people off. Okay, cool. And like that was it. And wasn't until years later when I was like, oh, I've been saving these bird shot pellets that got dug out of my body, thinking that I would do something cool with them. And I was like, they're just gonna sit here and stare at me. What do I do? So I Googled serial killer memorabilia. And I found the guy who was on the show. I was like, that's the guy from the show. Okay, let's email him real quick. And he was so excited because he was like, nobody else has shit from the James Holmes trial. Like, no one else has stuff because it was only a few years after it happened, and I was really struggling and I was like, what the fuck do I do? And someone's like, someone will pay money for these. And I was like, oh, what? Oh yeah, they will. So it was kind of how it started, like we listed them on one website for, God, I can't remember how much, but they sold pretty quick. It was almost right away someone bought them. And it was like, I mean, the media circus from that was also pretty nuts. I had no idea. It was like, I know I had found out about it through a program called Taboo, but I did not know how taboo it really was. And I just had to fuck around and find out. And I found out.
Was there any backlash that came from the media after selling the pellets and whatnot?
I'm surprised. Like, I'm surprised that the media wasn't worse. Like, I feel like people were speaking about it from a very, like, I feel like the people that interviewed me did it from like a pretty objective point of view. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, this person is doing this thing rather than like, is this person doing a thing that is good or bad? Like, I did make the mistake of reading some of the comments on one of the articles online. Like, I know they say never read the comments, but like, whatever. I read the comments, and one of them was like, she is lucky she didn't get shot with a bigger gauge of something and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, lady, you know how guns work. It still hurts. Like, and she was like, and these people are just, I swear to God, she said something along the lines of like laying in bed with like Charles Manson. I can't say it with a straight face, laying in bed with Charles Manson or something. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and I guess like, I mean, I understand where people are coming from with that. Like, I mean, as someone who was like a victim of a heinous crime, I understand why it's a sensitive subject for some people. I get why they feel that way. But, to me, it was just like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So the backlash wasn't nearly, I mean, the irony is that like the backlash of selling murderabilia was not nearly as big as the backlash from surviving something horrible. That's, the world doesn't make sense. It's okay.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about that and the whole crisis actors thing. I know a lot of survivors of mass shootings have been attacked and over and over again. I mean, I know Parkland was real bad and a few other incidents. It's just crazy to me that people
Sandy Hook
can
was pretty fucked
look
up.
at, murdered children or anybody that's murdered and just be like, oh, they're being paid money to lay there and act like a human corpse. Like it just the whole idea of crisis actors, I never really understood that, and that's like conspiracy beyond conspiracy beyond conspiracy. I believe.
Yeah, I think that it's like almost, I think it's like, I think part of it is people just don't want to believe that something that terrible happened. I like, maybe I'm just trying to like psychoanalyze them, but I just think they don't want to believe that something that terrible happened. And like the end of people that it happened to, it's like, yeah, I wish I had the privilege of being able to like deny that this happened because it happened to us.
If you could give any piece of advice to a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, or even a survivor of a mass shooting, what might that be, if they're struggling to suppress or even carry that trauma with them?
I think like the most important thing when someone is trying to heal from trauma is to not suppress it. I think that like I spent a lot of years trying to suppress it in certain ways, like whether consciously or unconsciously, I would like as someone who was like sexually abused like in early childhood, I think like a lot of the time I tried to seek approval from people who were just like shitty or abusive or whatever. I tried to drink about it. Um, I tried to do everything but heal from it. And because it's hard to rip off a bandage, you know what I mean? Like you have to like reopen that wound and like actually treat it. But like that's the thing, like if you just leave a wound to fester under a bandage, like what's it going to do? It's going to get infected and it's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. Like and I think I didn't like fully jump into like healing until I thought I was going to die. Like it was like, in June I'll probably have about 6 years sober. Like if I hadn't quit drinking and stuff, like the reason I quit was because I felt like I was physically going to die. Like I felt so horrible that I just couldn't function anymore. And I think that like it was what people call like the gift of desperation. I really, but I tell people, please don't let it get to that point because that's a horrible point to be at. But maybe that's what you need, right? Like, but I would have been nice if I could have started getting better before that. And it's like I was going to see like a therapist and stuff, but it was all like kind of performative bullshit. Like I was just going so I could say I went. Like I wasn't the picture perfect epitome of self-care. Like I was, getting drunk as shit every single night. And so I guess my point is like, um, suppressing it will just make it worse. I think like one of the most important things I learned in therapy recently was when my therapist said, "Have you thought about just riding the wave?" And for me, it's sort of like what you learn in like Buddhist meditation or dialectical behavior therapy, which was also awesome. Uh, it's about like sitting next to your feelings instead of sitting in them. I talk a lot about like sitting in your own shit. Like I can sit in my own shit and let it just marinate in it and feel awful and not get any better. Because sometimes it's easier to just sit there. It's easier to just be like stuck in the mud. I don't want to say it's easier, but it's more familiar. So to us, it's easier at the time. But for me, it's like learning how to sit with my feelings so they don't take me over, which is a lesson I've been having to learn a lot recently. It's a lesson I keep having to relearn. It's like I recently like adopted a dog. Turns out like there is no way in hell that he can like safely live with me, with my parents. My parents watch my dog, and this dog is so neglected and has obviously been abused and traumatized that like I can't even safely have him around while I rehabilitate him. I just can't. And so like I've been grieving like really hard. Like it's hard not to internalize stuff and feel like you failed when something like that happens. Like I couldn't save them, but all in all, like I did everything I could. I gave this dog a great foster home, where he's not neglected and not abused, and got him like veterinary care and stuff so that he could go to his forever home. So I guess my point is, um, not letting those feelings take me over is so hard. And it's not like, a lot of people are like, yeah, just don't let those feelings run your life. And I'm like, yeah, because it's just so easy, right? Like it's not easy. So like, but eventually you do get to a point if you like work really hard at it for a very long time where like, yeah, I have plenty of days that are bad. Like I've spent plenty of times like crying the past few days. Like I feel like shit. I do. Like, but I don't have to sit in my shit anymore. Like so I guess, with all the rambling, I was trying to say that, a lot of therapy, which by the way, therapy doesn't just mean like sitting there and talking to someone who's a brick wall and is going to say, how does that make you feel? I think it's really important to find the right therapist for you and find the right type of therapy for you. Like there's so much stuff out there. There's like cognitive behavioral therapy, there's dialectical behavior therapy, there's just so much. For me, it was like a 12-step program and then a therapist and a psychiatrist. And I still do this. Like I still go to my 12-step meetings. I still see a therapist. I still talk to my psychiatrist. I still, you know, um, do what I can to build a life worth living. And I think for a lot of people, They just say like, it's easier said than done. And that's what I've always said, because like, I'm not invalidating that. It's totally true. But I think the hardest part is getting started. I really feel like getting started is the hardest part, right? Like any sort of regimen that is good for you, it's going to be so hard to get started and stick with it. I forget to floss my teeth all the time. There's it's like starting a fitness regimen, And so I think what I'm getting at is the important thing is finding what works for you. And I think um what's the right word? Finding what works for you and consistency are so important, and getting started, even though it's so hard, is important. And I don't know, when people ask me, how did you get started? I don't know. I just did it. Like maybe my body just kind of floated around and was like, go do the things. I don't know how I got started. I just did the things, like I'm not brave. I haven't done things that were scary on purpose, really. Like I feel like I've just been pushed into doing the things. I haven't had a choice. I've been just so desperate not to feel that miserable again, that I don't have a choice and I have to keep going. So, you know, um, find what works for you. Like see a therapist if you need to, talk to a psychiatrist if you need to. Oh, are you a drunk? 12-step program or something similar. And maybe 12 steps don't work for you. If they work for me, and like I'm doing a lot better than I was 6 years ago. I was a mess. And yeah, I tell people, like, it doesn't matter, the cliches are all true, right? It doesn't matter how slow you go as long as you don't stop. I feel like there are days where I eat cookies for breakfast and vape for lunch and feel like crap, but at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, take a vitamin, drink some water, like go lay down. It's sometimes we just have to do little things to make it better, and that's still something. I feel like we pressure ourselves a lot, to like live every day like it's your last, so I'm like, oh, live every day like it's your last, but like that gives me so much anxiety. Like I have so much anxiety when I think about that, like, oh, every day might be my last, what if I get hit by a bus, like, no, you're doing fine. Like if today was my last day on earth, I do the same shit that I'm doing right now. Like I'd be sitting here holding a cup of coffee talking to Andrew Dodge on a podcast, and then I would go get my dogs and I would give them kisses, and then I would come home and do dishes and make dinner. Like that's what I would do with my last day on earth. Like, because I don't know, I'm content with my life the way it is, even though sometimes it really sucks. But it's just about riding that wave through the suck, because if you resist that wave, like you're gonna fuck yourself up. So that's hopefully something from that was helpful. Oh, and pet a dog. Or a cat if you're allergic to dogs. I'm so sorry if you're allergic to animals, because that would suck.
So before we get out of here, is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
I can't really think of anything. You know, I'm not the most creative when it comes to the interviews. They're like, do you want to add anything? I don't know. But I do have a Patreon. So I did not totally give up on the modeling thing. And so I started also started doing some acting stuff, and I did just get back into writing. Actually, I was really excited because I submitted a little article to Morbidly Beautiful, and that got published, and I was like, yeah. So I do have a Patreon. I'll send you the link if you want to put it in like a description or something, but it should say patreon.com/blah blah blah apocalypse doll, but it'll say on the top like Rebel Ghoul is creating a lot of crap, like music, art, this and that. I wanted to have a one-stop shop, for lack of better words, for like everything I do, like music, art, modeling, acting, behind the scenes stuff. And so I did make a Patreon. So it should be patreon.com, however they do the slashes, Apocalypse Doll. And that's where all my stuff is. A lot of 18 plus stuff, nothing that hardcore, but it's I warned people, I'm like, no kids allowed in there. So yeah, I do have everything in one spot there. And I feel like there was something I wanted to plug here, but I can't remember what. So I but on Patreon, I do post updates about, giveaways and like raffles and stuff I've been having. And I do have items always going up on like cult collectibles, and stuff like that. I haven't worked with any other websites recently. So I'm pretty sure cult collectibles is the only person that has any of my stuff right now. So between that and Patreon, you can support me continuing to do things like running a dog nanny business and making weird shit, which I've got a bandage mask right now that I'm working on. So it looks disgusting. I'm so excited, but yeah, so all my behind the scenes stuff and all my new stuff and pre you get to see stuff before it actually hits social media too. It's all on my Patreon. So
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for giving me your time today. I know this is the second time we've done this, and I enjoyed it just as much as I did the first time, and we'll have to do it again.
yeah, definitely. Thanks, dude.